Does the chart dictate who you are? A clock tells you what time it is, but it doesn't create the concept of time. And I think that's the best way to view a chart as well. You can say you're a born diplomat because your sun is in Libra, or you can say, as I prefer to, that you're born diplomatic and your sun reflects that by being in Libra. I like a synchronous relationship between the chart and the native rather than a causal relationship. Can you recommend an astrology reading list? There's good stuff out there, some of which is only available in hard copy. But let me tell you the truth. Other than needing an ephemeris for the 20th and the 21st centuries, you really don't have to buy many books anymore. Unless you're the earthy type that really needs to hold a book in your hands, I would dispense with that when it comes to astrology, because to learn this subject, you have to hear a chorus of voices. And for that reason, I suggest that you don't buy individual books and instead you go to a website called Scribd. Scribd gives you instant access to ebooks, scan books, audiobooks, articles, and podcasts. The beauty of Scribd is that you can search for authors like some of my favorites, Melanie Reinhardt, Demetra George, Tracy Marks, Stephen Arroyo, Howard Sasportas, Alan Oken, Zip Dobbins, Liz Green, Dane Rudyer, and the old greats like William Lilly from the mid-1600s and Alan Leo and Evangeline Adams from around the turn of the century. One of the best features of Scribd is that you can search by topic. So if one day you want to see what horror astrology is all about, put that in, and dozens of books will pop up. If you just want to focus on the nodes, no problem, those books are there. So this is really the place to go. And often I see a thing that says they're giving 30 days for free. What does it mean when a moon is out of bounds? The moon usually stays within a small strip in the sky as it moves around the celestial equator. When it moves outside this normal range, whether high or low, it's said to be out of bounds. A person with an out of bounds moon will express extreme preferences and values and interests that don't fit into normal society very well. On the positive side, they're visionary and too creative for a normal life. Einstein had an out of bounds moon in Sagittarius, and he was one of the most intelligent, imaginative people who ever lived. Another out of bounds moon in Sagittarius was Susan Smith, the infamous mother who thought being childless would make her a better prospect on the dating market. And so she drowned her two young sons in the lake. Murdering your children is pretty out there. And doing it for such a superficial reason is extremely unusual. But out of bounds moons go there. Wherever they are on the spectrum, they go there. The moon isn't the only planet that can go out of bounds, but it is the one that gets the most press and it's most identifiable. If you want to see if your moon is in bounds or out, I've added a calculator in the box below. Can you explain all the liliths? Sure. There are three different Liliths: the asteroid Lilith, black moon Lilith, and dark moon Lilith. Let's start with the asteroid Lilith. Her glyph is represented like this. It looks like a fist with a little flick at the end. She is between Mars and Jupiter in the asteroid belt. Now, the glyph for black moon Lilith is represented like this. It's a crescent with a cross underneath. Black moon Lilith is a sensitive point, not a physical body. It's what's called the lunar apogee. That's the spot where the moon is farthest away from the Earth. This item wobbles so badly that you can actually choose between the true position and the mean position when you look up your placement. Dark moon Lilith is a real body in the sky. At least that's what they say. For 400 years, it's been seen as a little dot as it crosses the face of the sun. Since this body is dark and reflects no light whatsoever, the glyph is a zero with a line through it. Some people say it's there and others say it isn't, but for astrologers, it doesn't really matter. We put things in the chart that we can't see, and even things that are imaginary. The asteroid, the black moon, and the dark moon Lilith are read in similar ways because they all go back to the same myth. Lilith was the first partner of Adam before Eve. She wouldn't allow herself to be dominated, though. When he applied force to try to subdue her, Lilith shrieked, sprouted wings, and flew away. Her name actually means screech owl. The Liliths in your chart are all places where you're somewhat psychologically damaged. In the myths about her, she isn't a heroic character. In fact, in some stories, she goes mad and turns into a beast and eats babies. With some subtle variations, all of your Lilith placements indicate trouble fitting in with the norm, and there are usually problems surrounding pathological sexuality and children. Lilith is where you respond to experience in a primitive, irrational way, and you just can't function the way others do. What does an eclipse mean? An eclipse is a special conjunction of the sun and the moon that happens every 6 months. Wait, you might be thinking, whoa. The sun and moon pass each other every month, don't they? Why doesn't an eclipse happen every single month then? It's because, yes, they pass in the same sign at the same degree, but they aren't at the same latitude, so they don't block each other. It's when the moon passes in front of the face of the sun that the sun is blocked from view, either totally or partially. A solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse will happen in roughly the same month in opposing signs near the nodes. Eclipses represent great beginnings and great endings. What kind of beginnings? What kind of endings? That depends upon what house axis it falls into. The house axis will tell what area of life will be affected and what kinds of things will take shape. How do you get a chart back on track when it's been derailed by trauma? In the Gnostic Gospels, it says that if you bring forth that which is within you, it will be your salvation. If you don't bring forth that which is within you, it will be your destruction. The chart is that which is within you. And yes, trauma within you can be toxic if it isn't transformed. However, I think it's important to know that it isn't actually possible to derail a chart, not once you're born with that chart. Symptoms of trauma can cause a collapse of the optimal you, and it can create a situation where every planet in the chart is operating at a lower vibration. But that chart is still on the rails. Because you're an organism like every other creature on Earth, you're at the mercy of how this organism protects itself. You may even feel trapped in the defenses that are part of your survival blueprint. These defenses come on every level, from the physical to the body mind connection to the psychological and the psychic. Your response to trauma has to be respected for being part of the natural world. But you should look at the trauma because it is reversible, even if it can feel overwhelming. You need to look at what's within you because trauma almost never lifts and goes away on its own. That's called a deliverance. Deliverance is under the province of the sea god Neptune, while trauma is squarely in the underworld with Pluto. And he makes you earn it by crawling out through the darkness. Since healing trauma is comprehensive, you might have to call in a variety of professionals and appropriate support. The birth chart acts as a map or a guide for this journey. As you process trauma the right way, each planet will start rising in vibration, and together they'll bring the sun back to its full shine. Can you say something about the decadence, also called the decans of the signs? I'll answer this in two ways: where the decadence came from and what they mean now. The decadents are very old. They're Egyptian of the pre-Roman or pre-Hellenistic era. We're talking about 3000 BC or so. The decadents are subdivisions of the circle. Remember, the circle represents a year. There are 360 degrees for 360 days because in order to divide this evenly, they scratched the last 5 days of the year. Now the Gregorian calendar has a 7-day week. The Egyptian calendar used 36 10-day weeks. So their circle had 36 divisions of 10 degrees each. These divisions were the precursors of the zodiac and the houses that did not yet exist. For instance, the 10-degree subdivisions were associated with rising stars, and each of those rising stars were associated with an Egyptian god. Now, in the daytime, they were able to watch the movement of the sun and tell what time it was. At night, they couldn't do that, so they watched the stars rise through the decadence of the circle. These positions would tell them roughly what time it was, and this was important for rituals. If you appeal to the right rising star and the right decadent, you could draw on the power of the god associated with it. So in that nighttime circle, there were sensitive points. Those are the points we now call the rising sign on the horizon and the culminating part of the circle that we now call the midheaven. After the conquest of Alexander the Great, the Greeks added the zodiac that we would recognize today. Even though we now have Greco-Roman symbolism, the decadents still hang on. We still have the 10-degree divisions given to us by the ancients. The original term for the decadents tells you something about their function. They were called the faces of the signs. This is an interesting way to look at it. Every sign has three modes of expression. Every 10 degrees is a different face. As subtle as it might be, there is some variety depending upon which 10-degree version of the sign we're talking about. The first decadent of the sign is the sign itself, and the next two decadents are the next two signs of that element in zodiacal order. If I give you an example, you'll see what I mean. Let's use Aries. The sign of Aries is said to have three decadents or three faces, beginning with Aries itself. The first decadent of Aries is the first 9 degrees and 59 minutes of Aries. Going in zodiacal order, the second decadent of Aries is the Leo decadent. The Leo decadent of Aries is 10 degrees to 19 degrees and 59 minutes. The third decadent of Aries is the Sagittarius decadent, which covers 20 degrees to 29 degrees and 59 minutes of Aries. Each decadent of Aries also has a ruler. The Aries decadent of Aries has the ruler Mars. The Leo decadent of Aries is ruled by the Sun. And the Sagittarius decadent of Aries is ruled by Jupiter. The theory here is that a native whose sun is at 13 degrees of Aries will act differently from a person who's at 23 degrees of Aries. At 13 degrees of Aries, you might see some leonine attributes. At 23, you might see a little more Sagittarian flair. An early degree Aries is a true Aries, the most Aryan type of all. And if you want a little more info about the person, you can also look to the ruling planet of the decadent too. This added level of variety in sun signs was a little more important when there weren't as many planets, there wasn't a developed house system, and we didn't have all the aspects that we have today. In modern Western astrology, the decadents have taken a back seat to many other topics. Thank you for watching Secrets from an Astrologer's Desk, Cosmic Questions and Answers number 10. Stay tuned for all the ways you can get in touch for a birth chart reading and full astrological services.